All right, so we're going to talk a little about Filthy Fiat and then a little bit about the convergence of art and code and how that applies to artists who work in the physical space and what it's like transitioning that to Bitcoin. Start by introducing yourself, Coldie.
What's up? I'm Coldie, and I came up with actually the project Filthy Fiat came to me, and I'll give a super quick backstory. So back pre-COVID, I live in fire country and houses burned down, and I needed to have kind of a backup place, like kind of a bug out box in case my house burned down. So I buried money in the ground, and a couple years later, I dug up the box to see how my money was doing, and it was a full brick of mold. And I was like, oh shit, that's not good. So I went to the bank, and the bank said, the manager ran over to me and said, you got to get out of here with your toxic biohazard money. I was like, wow, that's pretty crazy. So one thing led to another, and I realized I was holding the exact thing that Bitcoin fixes. It fixes fragility of currency and the impermanence issue. So I took all these filthy, moldy bills and I broke them up, and I have a nature generative art project using fiat currency. And with that, I started working with Michael, and he helped bring some of these concepts into a super fun project, and you can kind of take it from there.
Yeah, so I'll introduce myself, everybody. My name is Michael. I work with Inscribing Atlantis as a full stack developer, visual designer, and artist. And so, yeah, Coldie and I have been collaborating on this Filthy Fiat project, looking at how we can take a number of these really beautiful physical pieces of media that have been digitized. So, in particular, these like scanned, dirty, gnarly dollar bills, and then recombine those into something that is very expressive and very affecting, but also can be sort of extended in a sort of procedural digital way.
Yeah, so I want to go back in time a little bit. We've a couple of years deep into the Ordinals protocol existence, but I want to kind of how did you guys get into Web3 and digital art? And did you ever start in the physical space? And how do you kind of bring your physical works into the digital world? So I'll kick that to Coldie first.
Yeah, so I went to art school, learned a bunch of really good ways of making physical art, and also early, I guess, kind of digital tools. And along the way, I started, putting works on canvases that were natively digital. But, in the gallery space, if it's not on a canvas or something to hang on the wall, then they don't know what to do with it. So I was putting my digital stuff onto canvases, and that was fine, and it was interesting with 3D glasses and some fun stereoscopic things. But the rabbit hole of Web3 found me also through finance. I was listening to some podcasts about precious metals, and someone started talking about Bitcoin. And I wanted to be a part of this revolution. And so it was 2017, I went into Google and I typed in blockchain and art because I wanted to add some art to the ecosystem. And that was the rabbit hole. And there was nothing back then. So that was my orange pill in.
Yeah, as for myself, I've been making programmatic, computer code-based art for 10 or 12 years. Only, relatively recently, I suppose in the last year and a half or 2 years, have landed in ordinals. And the thing that appealed to me about it was kind of the nature of the medium itself. So as a digital artist, as someone working with code and separate assets and things that get combined and like generated like at the time that the viewer is looking at them, it can be very difficult to package up all of these assets such that they will work and look the same when you need to display it somewhere else. I had found in the past, working on procedural art, that many pieces were very brittle. When I would try to load up a project half a year later, for some reason it wouldn't work like it used to. Often that was user error, but that's neither here nor there. And it just felt like a lot of these digital art projects, especially those that were sort of like live rendering based, lacked a home, like a place that they could live and exist in their like sort of correct viewable state, exist alongside documentation and alongside sort of things that describe provenance and such. And so ordinals really emerged just as a very natural fit for that. Just a place that you could trust that something is on chain, sort of by definition, it will stay on chain.
Yeah, I think Bitcoin provides a really unique convergence between developers and artists simply because of the restrictions, right? So you have file size restrictions, you have 4 megabyte blocks, but even more so, you have financial restrictions as to trying to compress your art in such a way that works on Bitcoin, something that Coldie and I have run into. But what has been the challenge that you've faced when, trying to, whereas like on Ethereum, you could upload whatever file size you want. How have you kind of faced that challenge, and like how has Bitcoin kind of forced you to use code to get your art on chain, and then what kind of creative results have come of that?
I mean, collaborating with you has been wonderful because I brought you assets, and with the file size limitations, you were able to kind of take those in and recook them in really cool ways so that, for example, like we were wanting to make the face of George Washington high fidelity, right? But then some of the kind of textural details of the bill, you could compress those and make those easier to compute with space, and that was awesome. So it's been a back and forth where we're sharing ideas, we'll iterate, you'll come back, and it's just this kind of symbiotic growth it's been fun to watch you play.
Yeah, absolutely. Developing art on ordinals is a very ship in a bottle kind of experience, but you are also coming up with the pieces that go in the bottle. You have to figure out how to get them in the bottle. You have to figure out how to stack them together once they're in the bottle. But you've been given a very nice bottle to start with. And so, via the ordinal ecosystem, via, our godfather, Casey Rodamore, we had a very nice bottle. And via Coldie and like the really beautiful scans of these filthy dollar bills that you had provided me, we had some very nice pieces to put in that bottle. But all of these scans were very high resolution. None of them would fit in the bottle, so to speak, without completely breaking the bank. And so what we did was we started with a couple dozen scans of like the front and back faces of bills. I think in their original resolution, everything added up to, I think, pretty close to a gigabyte. And we had to be very creative with how do we get the most important parts of these baseline image assets, available to our generative kind of, like our basically program we're running that's recombining them into other textures and objects. And so, yeah, as you were describing, kind of what we came up with was that we do kind of need to keep some of these images at maximum resolution or as close as possible. And so we just have little chunks of the bill where there's a lot of detail, things where it's like the face, lettering, text that says like legal tender, the stamps that are on the bill. And we kept really high resolution images of those. We combined those with some lower resolution images of the entire bill sort of at runtime, in the sort of generative program. And so it allows us to get the richness of the original images where it's most important, but still be able to shave off a lot of file size. I mean, probably more than 95% of the original file size that we started with, which allows us to go from something that I don't think we probably could have feasibly inscribed all of that and been able to afford it, and getting it down to something where it still captures all the most important visual details, but also where I would say where you do see some jankiness kind of in the pixelation scheme we kind of have going, like it's very expressive. And it feels sort of enmeshed in the medium itself. And I think, as I said, that's what I have found to be so entertaining and simultaneously very frustrating in dealing with the medium of the ordinals inscription, which is that Yeah, you're playing this kind of crazy game of Tetris where you have to get like everything into a very kind of small package and then expand it back out into something that is has a lot of affect and is very expressive.
And one thing I'll add to that is I like to work with 3D space and creating dimension with like the z-axis. And I was talking with Michael, and it was always the North Star was that I want layering and depth, and you would go back and mess with that, and we got from one layer to like the next layer out with the gold leafing on top, and then you really expanded it to these like fanning bills and hyper stacks, and it just really adds a lot using the same recursive elements to build these things and not bloat the file size itself. It was great.
Yeah, so I think one of the interesting things that is developing in the ecosystem, and like I've worked with you on different recursive inscriptions in the past, and I have to play this role. I'm more of a developer. I don't have as much like artistic talent, so I need to take what Coldie tells me and try to translate that as to how he wants it on chain. But there's this new like emerging evolution of like Coldie can actually use some tools that are emerging in the space, like Juno, for example, from Transient Labs, where it is basically like a code editor, but Coldie can prompt it using AI to help instead of him trying to have me translate the art for what it is, he gets to create the recursive code on chain and how he wants it. So I really don't need to like apply any artistic like thought process. These tools kind of give you the ability to express to me how you want the art to display on chain. And I think like what you were talking about with the depth with your art and how it reflects your physical pieces is something that you've been able to bring to life with those tools. So I want to like get your impression on how these tools are evolving. I know we're still in such the early days of it, but like what they've allowed you to do without the use of a developer putting it on chain.
Yeah, it's been mind-blowing. Like in real time, I've been able to just vibe code these concepts, and it's nice to have developers, like smart minds in the space, to take a look at the code and like say this is going to work or not. We need to retweak that. But I've been able to, take the Jack Dorsey one, and from concept to pseudo implementation, like I could do it by myself. And I've made mini games now, and it's just like it's the freedom of creativity has really been unlocked. And as these code, the stacks improve and you get logic, and it's mind blowing what we can do now.
So I want to talk a little bit more about Filthy Fiat and about the collection itself, and learn a little bit more about your plans for that collection and what collectors may expect once that kind of hits the chain and hits the launch pads.
You want to do it, or I can? Either one. Okay. So the idea, all the releases I do need to have a form and a function to them, and in this case, we wanted to work with a scarcity model so that you can invite people in, and you can have a base layer of core collectors, but then each subsequent release is a half amount of the next one. So by having it tiered down, we could not only play with the bills themselves, and I guess the most fun part is when it starts out with the bills, the first release, it's pretty much all gold. So it's like a little homage to the golden ticket Willy Wonka, where you can get a ticket and you're in, but then as it goes down and each release is half the supply, it becomes more filthy. So by the end of it, instead of things going from filthy to gold, it's gold to filthy. It just has this like really fun through line to it that you can see visually, but also it's in the code.
Yeah, and as the releases continue, there is a sort of visual entropy where the editions, because the gold is peeling off of the bills using this sort of procedural rendering that we came up with. As the gold peels off the bills in subsequent releases and you get larger and larger stacks of bills as you go on, you start to see more differences from one edition to another. And so what starts out as very pristine and uniform, the same way that, like a nice rubber banded stack of bills, like clean from the bank would look, ends up as something that is the result of a highly stochastic and entropic process, and leaves you with a digital artifact that has, I think, a lot of the spiritual stank of your real life brick of filthy, disgusting biohazard money.
Yeah, so you also were working on another piece, which was the flag. I'm not sure if you want to talk a little bit about that and what's the status on that.
Yeah, so I built a Filthy Fiat flag, which is based on the United States flag. And I AI vibe coded that one. And it takes, they're all recursive ordinals that combine into the flag system. It reloads every 30 seconds into a fresh layout. And there's a clock component to it where every hour the orange stripe referencing Bitcoin changes to one of the flag stripes. And the message of that is it's always time for Bitcoin. It's always that time. On top of that, it's also a calendar where I encoded historical moments in Bitcoin and USD history so that, for example, Bitcoin Pizza Day just happened a couple days ago. For the whole day, there's a Bitcoin pizza up in the corner where the stars go. So it's kind of a way to educate people about, the history of, Bitcoin, the history of fiat, but also just have something that's always regenerating and living.
And the Filthy Fiat flag, if I understand correctly, is a one-of-one piece. Is that right?
Yeah. It's a one-of-one piece, and that's being auctioned through the Inscribing Atlantis Bitcoin conference. So that's available now. Also comes with a signed AP print. So again, bringing the digital and the physical together. And my hope is that, whoever owns that piece can have it up on their digital display, and it has that form and the function, but also reminds you of the impermanence and fragility of fiat currency and how Bitcoin fixes that.
And I believe you can bid on that on megalith.art until June 3rd.
That's right. The Filthy Fiat flag is one of 6, I suppose, parcels of different pieces that are being auctioned right now on megalith.art, which is an auction platform and a curated auction by Inscribing Atlantis and Bitcoin 2025, kind of in partnership. And so yours is one of the featured pieces. We heard a little bit about some of the other ones, like the Parker Day and Casey Rodomore portrait from Fun. And so that is available right now. So you can bid from your phone, from your Xverse browser right now. You can also go to megalith.art and see the Filthy Fiat flag. And then the numbered editions of Filthy Fiat, which are, I guess it could be said that Filthy Fiat is sort of a wide kind of visual and aesthetic kind of ecosystem that has a number of different series and pieces in it, if that's maybe an appropriate way of categorizing it.
Yeah, there's going to be, it's a multi-chain release for a couple of reasons, and thematically I wanted to visually make it obvious to the collector. So the Bitcoin release that we're doing for Filthy Fiat is all gold leafed, and gold and Bitcoin are kind of talked about as, Bitcoin is the gold version. For Ethereum, they'll be like silver leafed. So I'm creating visual distinctions between them, but it was important that the ordinal version had that beautiful gold on it.
So I think we're wrapping up on time here, but I wanted to shoot you one last question. For artists who maybe are a little timid or, the barrier of entry on Bitcoin can be intimidating, what would you recommend to people like that who are looking to kind of get their art on chain, whether it requires the input of a developer or just like a platform that can help them onboard?
Hats off, I would say, to Gamma, first of all. I mean, Gamma has been wonderful for helping me, especially when I have code or I don't have code. Their artist relations are wonderful. Brett, Nick, Jack. I mean, everybody has been wonderful to work with. Inscribing Atlantis, powerhouse team. For me, being an artist and having trusted people that I can go to that do quality good work and understand the underlying protocol leaves me to stay in the studio and create and not get hung up on a lot of the more technical things that in the past would maybe cause me to pause or not go after a project. Now all that worry is gone, and I can, go to people who know the right way to do things, and we can execute and succeed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would also say like there's phenomenal utilities on Gamma. There's also like really fantastic functionality on Chisel for getting into inscribing. I personally kind of come from the like do things the hard way camp. Just seems like how it's sort of shaken out for me, and I wouldn't always recommend it. It's been very rewarding to sort of like, do everything very like, I guess sort of training wheels off, like, at the command line as much as possible. But I think that's sort of one of my own idiosyncrasies that I would not recommend to a lot of people, especially as there are like really phenomenal tools like being developed and pushed by a lot of like very thoughtful people in the ecosystem.
Yeah, and I definitely think the ecosystem, whether it's Gamma or a huge slew of other people, come to the artist support and help them through every step of the way. So it's a pretty healthy ecosystem for that. But I think that's about it for us. Thank you guys for your time.
All right, thank you so much, Jack.
Thanks.